Now then, Vinyl Monkey here. 1979. I hope you like that walk on, by the way. That was a tribute to Vinyl Richie, who he always has great walk-ons. I love his channel, so just giving a nod to that. I hope it worked all right. But anyway, 1979. This is the end of my series that started with 1966. Since when I've held up about 250 or so records in my top 10s. In many of the years I've done a sort of a British and an American version, and that's the case here with 1979. So this is the end of it with my Britain and Europe top 10. And I've just had a look, and it's my 75th video since I started this malarkey. So yeah, I know what you're thinking. You'd think, well, bloody hell, you'd have thought you'd have got a bit better at it by then, you know, that there'd have been some progress. Well, I suppose I'm trying to mirror reality here, you know, that progress is just an illusion. There is no such thing as progress when it comes to human nature. As an animal, we have not progressed one jot in the last, whatever, billion years, and all this sort of illusory stuff, particularly that since the capitalists came in the last 100 or 200 years, and you know, trying to kid people that these little technical advancements are indicators of progress. Absolute bollocks. So there is no progress. Don't get wrapped up in it. Don't fall for it. I'm an example of it, the lack of it. So anyway, I always irritatingly, probably for some people, I start with a few I haven't put in there. These are ones where I thought I really wanted to, I thought they would have been in, I'd have expected them to be in. I wanted to get Sham 69, but this is Hersham Boys, and I think their earlier album was maybe better, but Sham 69, yeah, a bit like the, I don't know, the Cockney Ramones, I suppose, you know, good time stuff, football terrace chanting sort of stuff, and I really liked some of their singles, Hurry Up Harry and all that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, they got beset with problems, and their gigs were often colonised by sort of violent racist skinheads. Not that all skinheads are violent racists, I know some were very much the opposite of that, but anyway, they got, and I think that, I don't know whether this album was an attempt to shake some of them off. It went a bit more poppy, but it didn't really work for me, despite it coming with the 12-inch single, The Kids Are United, which is great, and the title track's great as well, Hersham Boys, yeah. So I didn't include them, but I do like Sham 69 and Jimmy Percy. I love Ian Jury and the Blockheads. I mean, what a band, but this is not their greatest album. I mean, their singles were great, but Ian Jury had a strict policy about not putting his singles on the LPs, and so What a Waste and Reasons to Be Cheerful and Ain't That Been Some Clever, and all of it, they're not on here, despite them being released around the same time. This is Do It Yourself. It's a good album, but it would have been better with those on, and it didn't make me top 10. And then this is Zeppelin's last one. I would have thought I would have had Zeppelin in my top 10, but I don't know. By this time, Page and Bonham were knackered. I mean, John Bonham died after this, not how long, I think, within a year of this album. They were knackered with their addictions. John Paul Jones was left to write much of this on his piano with him and Plant. And it's sort of a lot of it, a bit of it sounds Zeppelin, but a lot of it is a veer towards sort of a more poppy sort of sound. And for me, it's just Zeppelin sadly running out of steam, a pale shadow of their earliest stuff, and it didn't get in my top 10. So what did? Well, number 10, I'm surprised. I mean, talking about old dinosaurs like Zeppelin, he's a real, by this time, an old dinosaur. Jethro Tull, this is Stonewatch. And I have a real soft spot for this album. I think Ian Anderson's lyrics are really genuine and heartfelt. They deal with sort of impending environmental catastrophe, so they're sadly still, or even more relevant today than they were then. And this is the last album with the sort of Jethro Tull band as we know it, Martin Barr, Barrymore Barlow, John Evan, etc. That band sort of split up after this one, and although the brand Jethro Tull and Ian Anderson went forward, It wasn't with the same band and the same sort of sound, but this is a good album, some real good songs. I love the song Home, North Sea Oil, the opener, yeah, good stuff. My number 10, Jethro Tull, Stormwatch. My number 9, this is Peter Hamill of Van der Graaf Generator fame, there he is, PH7. This particular album is nowhere near as experimental as Van der Graaf Generator. It is musically, it's more sort of straightforward. You've still got to deal with the shock, or I do, of Peter Hamill's voice, which I naturally find it really difficult and irritating. So I've got to try and get behind that, into the lyrics and into the songs, which are good songs, nice arrangements as well. I love the first 3 tracks on here, and then it sort of, I wouldn't say it fizzles out, but it's not Hamill's, beyond those 3 tracks, I don't think it's Hamill's most interesting or anywhere near his best album, but it's a good album. PH7, my number 9. My number 8, this is one of those albums where the cover tells it all, really, I think. This is George Harrison, self-titled, and when you look at that soft focus photograph of George there, or on the back and wandering through the park, looking all relaxed and everything, you just, this album reflects those photos, if you like. It's soft, it's mellow, it's sweet, it's melodic, it's gentle, all around him, I suppose, punk rock was blowing itself out, and the sort of new wave and post-punk bands were coming in with their new sounds and everything, and George seemed absolutely blissfully unaware or uncaring about all of that, as he sort of seemed to go backwards into the early 70s. I mean, this looks and sounds and feels to me like an early 70s, 71 album rather than the 79 album, but it is lovely, and yeah, even though it takes me back a bit to dates before it was written and produced, that's a nice feeling. Sometimes you just want to feel nice, and this is a nice album. I love tracks 1, 3 and 5 particularly. Track 1, Love Comes to Everyone. Here Comes the Moon, track 3, which I suppose is a response to Here Comes the Sun, but it's gorgeous. And then Blow Away, which I think was a single. Lovely, lovely stuff. George Harrison, my number 8. My number 7, this is very different. This is the Slits cut. The Slits, there, Harry Up, Viv Albertine, and, oh goodness, I've forgotten the name of the other person. By this time they brought in a guy on drums, a guy called Budgie. He isn't on the picture, but it's the 3 main members of the Slits with their tops off, just with a loincloth covered in mud. So it was a controversial cover at the time, probably still is. They were formed by a lass called Harry Up, who was of German origin. And Mam Nora Foster actually married Johnny Rotten, and is still married to Johnny Rotten. He's now her carer. Sadly, she's developed dementia. But so Harry Up, Nora Foster's daughter, of German sort of origin, and she sings with this quite spiky Germanic sort of sharp voice that's really a good fit for the lyrics and the feminism that comes across, and for the sort of spiky sound, really. They do an unlikely cover of Marvin Gaye's Heard It Through the Grapevine. They do it really, really well. But this is a good album which stands up today. It's got a reggae, sort of punk pop reggae sound, an edgy sort of sound. Good stuff. Cut by the Slits, my number 7. Here's another one with a cover. Is a really good, this is Joe Jackson, Looks Sharp, and you couldn't look any sharper than that, could you, with those sharp shoes? Look at that, white leather and those laces there. Yes, what would I, yeah, lovely. Anyway, whatever happened to Joe Jackson? I don't know, he was a big thing briefly, wasn't he, around about this time. To some extent, I think he suffered by being in the shadow of Elvis Costello, and to a lesser extent Graham Parker, who around about the same time were mining the same sort of scenes, you know, angry young men full of angst and looking at sort of love and what was going on around them, and yeah, but Joe Jackson, great singer-songwriter. I mean, just brilliant tracks. This is a lovely sounding album. The first 3 tracks, One More Time, Sunday Papers, and then the single, Is She Really Going Out With Him? Marvellous, marvellous stuff. This is a lovely album. That was my number 6, Joe Jackson, Look Sharp. My number 5, this is Throbbing Gristle, who are deliberately looking nothing like this sound. Throbbing Gristle, those great, challenging, provocative sort of performance artists, really. They go beyond music into other realms of art. This is 20 jazz funk greats, which again is meant to just be totally misleading. But this is, what is it? This is sort of krautrocky sort of, kraftwerky, krautrocky sort of stuff, but with a sinister edge to it. You know, when I'm listening to this, I sort of veer, my feelings veer between sometimes a sort of comforting, sort of hypnotic sort of feeling, where you're just getting sort of relaxed and laid back, and then suddenly you feel disconcerted, totally discombobulated, you feel uncomfortable, particularly when the sort of voices come in on this, and so it makes you feel something. It's very effective. It stands up to date. It still sounds fresh and accessible. It's maybe their most accessible record anyway, by a very challenging, provocative band. But good stuff. Throbbing Gristle, 20 jazz funk greats. My number 5. My number 4, this is David Bowie. This is the 3rd of his so-called Berlin trilogy. This is Lodger. It's called a Berlin trilogy, even though by this time he'd moved to Switzerland and he produced this in Switzerland. And this is maybe less sort of out there, avant-garde than the other two. It hasn't got the sort of instrumental, cold sort of disconnected sort of music, alienating music that characterised to some extent those other 2 albums. I'm talking about Low and Heroes. This is it's songs, it's melodic, but it's very eclectic as well. I love the tracks DJ, Red Sails, Boys Keep Swinging, Repetition. Yeah, some real good tracks on it. Maybe the most sort of enjoyable out of those 3 albums, but you know, Bowie going his own way, on his way to being just a top artist, really. So David Bowie, Lodger, my number 4. My number 3, this is The Jam, Setting Suns, and I don't know, has there ever been a better songwriter in terms of capturing the sort of English working class experience? Paul Weller, just an absolute genius right through his career, I think. I mean, I've seen him, I didn't see The Jam until much later, after Weller had left, and Bruce Foxton is the bass player, leading the version of it, which were great, by the way. Foxton, what a bass player, what a songwriter in his own right. But I did see Weller with a Style Council, and I've listened to him, his stuff ever since, and he just doesn't do bad stuff. He's fantastic, and this is a brilliant album. This is right up there with their best. It's their 4th album, remarkably, but as I say, the bass is right up front. There's a sort of loose concept of friendship and friends going away to war and then coming back, but brilliant vignettes of working class England. I love the track Thick as Thieves. And then particularly the absolute masterpiece, brilliant single, one of the great singles, which really takes a swipe at the sort of English class system. That's the Eton Rifles. Brilliant stuff. The Jam, Setting Suns, my number 3. Now, numbers 2 and 1. I didn't know, I was veering between which one to put 1 and which one to put 2. I couldn't make my mind up. So I've got to do it one way or the other. Anyway, I've gone at number 2. I've got my one of my all-time favourites, Van Morrison. This is Into the Music. This is it follows on from Wavelength, which I did in my last top 10, and this one is a real step up a gear even from that, which was a good LP. This is in my top 5 Van albums of all the 43, 44 studio albums he's had out. In fact, he just recently had out this one. That's his 44th, something like that. Moving on Skiffle, and I'm going to do a detailed review of that album in a week or two when I've had a good chance to give it a good listen. But anyway, back to this one. This one is just beautiful. It's intense, yeah, it's uplifting, it's spiritual, it's not preachy. They've got a great band. They've introduced sort of violin sound up front in the sound, but it's Morrison's phrasing and singing which is just absolutely out of this world. The way he sings, just simple words. I mean, Angelou. Well, you'd have to listen to it to know what I mean. I can't articulate how he can turn a simple word, but I'll take a word like "and," which is in his cover of All in the Game, which he merges into 2 of his own numbers on side 2. Side 2, by the way, is absolutely fantastic. Side 1 has got some brilliant songs. Side 2 just works as a whole mood piece, if you like. But the way he sings the word "and," you know, a 3-letter word, 1 syllable, and Van just transforms it into something else, totally different meanings and sounds. Just beautiful, unbelievable. And although I'm going to talk a bit of bollocks here, yeah. Although I don't know Van Morrison at all, probably not that many people do. He seems a very private person, which is fair enough. It feels like, when I listen to this album, it feels like I'm getting closer to Van Morrison the person than maybe with anything else. But yeah, bollocks talking over. It's a great album. I've got it as my number 2. So what have I got as number 1? Well, the reason I couldn't decide was they're so bloody different, really. I mean, you couldn't get more different, I don't suppose, than Linton Kwesi Johnson's Forces for Victory. Linton Kwesi Johnson is a poet, a Jamaican poet. He's one of only 2 or 3 poets ever to feature in the Penguin Modern Classics while still alive. A brilliant poet in his own right. And he brought out, I don't know how many albums, at least half a dozen or so albums in the 70s, early 80s, setting that poetry to music. Now, even if there was no poetry on here and it was just a band, what a brilliant dub reggae sound. I mean, the bass up front, as you'd expect with dub reggae, but brilliant horns, superb percussion, sort of fire-cracking sort of snare drum, which sort of hits you really, really hard. But when you put Linton Kwesi Johnson's poetry to it, bloody hell, it knocks you backwards, this album. It really does. It's heart-wrenching stuff. All done in a sort of Jamaican patois, which doesn't make it difficult or inaccessible, even for me, someone who has no connection with or idea of the West Indian community at all. But yeah, I'm not even going to pick out. I'll pick out Sonny's Letter, which is about the sus laws at the time, which the racist Metropolitan Police used to intimidate and criminalise the black community. Heartbreaking stuff. I mean, if you don't feel deep within yourself, if you don't feel pain and shame when you're listening to some of this stuff, then I don't know, you probably haven't got a heartbeat then. So that's why that's my number 1. It's Linton Kwesi Johnson's Forces for Victory for 1979, and that's it. That's the end of this series. Thanks everyone who's stuck with it and watched it. Comments, as always, welcome, very welcome. I'll have a think about what to do next, but thanks again. Cheers.